The first scream didn't sound human. It came through the radio at 3:17 a.m., thin and warped, stretched like it had traveled too far through the cold. The signal crackled, then went dead. Static filled the cabin. No one spoke. Outside, snow fell in heavy silence, swallowing the headlights of the parked van. The forest stood frozen. Black trees locked in white, unmoving, watching. "Say that again," Mark finally whispered, his breath fogging the windshield. No answer. The radio clicked once. Then again. A slow, wet sound followed. Breathing. Too close to the mic, someone was trying to speak but couldn't finish a word. The sound cut off sharply, like a throat being crushed. "Base, we lost contact with Unit 3, Sarah said, her voice steady but pale. Last ping was inside the exclusion zone. The exclusion zone wasn't on any map. It was a dead stretch of forest that locals avoided in winter. No trails. No cabins. No rescue calls ever came from there, except tonight. The engine ticked softly as it cooled. Frost crawled across the windows like veins. No wind. No animals. No sound at all. Then the radio whispered one final thing, barely audible. It followed us home. The screen went dark. Sarah reached for the door handle. And that was when the knocking began, from outside the van. By the time we crossed the tree lane, the world had gone quiet in a way that felt unnatural, like the sound had been deliberately removed. Snow swallowed everything. The road, the signs, even the idea that people still lived beyond this point. Our headlights carved 2 weak tunnels through the white, and whatever lay outside them did not exist. Or worse, it existed patiently, waiting for us to look away. I checked my recorder. Red light on. Timestamp running. Documentation first. Fear later. That was always my role. Sarah drove with both hands tight on the wheel, knuckles pale. She hadn't spoken since the knocking stopped. Mark sat beside her, scanning the forest with a flashlight even though there was nothing to see. Nothing ever was, until suddenly there was too much. We were 4 people heading toward a place that didn't want witnesses. The exclusion zone wasn't marked on any official map. It never was. Local authorities only mentioned it when they ran out of excuses. Equipment malfunction. Weather-related disorientation. Exposure-induced hallucinations. They used those words like prayers. Unit 3, Eli and Jonas, had been sent in first to establish a perimeter. Veterans. Calm under pressure. The kind of men who double-checked locks and never joked about bad luck. Their last transmission still rang in my ears. It followed us home. I leaned forward from the back seat. Signal check again. Sarah pressed the button. Static. A hollow hiss, like air leaking from something sealed too long. Unit 3, this is base, she said. Respond. For a moment nothing happened. Then the radio clicked. Not static this time. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Crunching snow. Mark's head snapped toward the speaker. They're moving. No, I said quietly. The sound was wrong. Too close. As if whoever carried the radio wasn't walking through snow, but on top of it without weight. A voice followed. Soft. Careful. We didn't hear it come in. Eli's voice. Sarah swallowed. Eli, what didn't you hear? Silence stretched. The van idled roughly, the only sign the world still worked. Then the reply came, fractured. The cold. The transmission ended. We reached the clearing just after that. Blackridge Station emerged from the snowfall like a mistake. Too intact, too upright for a place abandoned for decades. Frost coated the windows from the inside. The antenna bent toward the forest, not the sky. Sarah cut the engine. The sudden quiet pressed against my ears until they rang. This is wrong, Mark muttered. No one argued. We stepped out into the snow. Cold wrapped around us immediately, invasive and personal. It found the gaps in our coats, the soft places at the throat and wrists. Breathing hurt. I marked the time, marked the temperature. Everything normal. Everything lying. Stick together, Sarah said. In and out. We confirm status, we leave. Her voice was steady, but I noticed she didn't look at the station. Her eyes stayed on the tree line. As we approached the building, I saw them. Footprints. 2 sets. They led from the forest to the door. They did not lead back. The door to Blackridge Station stood open. Inside, the air felt warmer, but not comforting. It was the warmth of something held too long in a closed fist. Jonas's gear lay by the wall, neatly placed. Boots aligned. Gloves folded. The kind of order you make when you're planning to come back. I recorded everything. The way the lights were still on. The radio humming softly on the desk. The faint smell of smoke that had no source. "Jonas." Mark called. His voice echoed strangely, bending at the edges. No answer. I moved closer to the radio. The frequency was open, transmitting into nothing. When I leaned in, I heard it. Under the static. Breathing. Not panicked. Patient. Sarah noticed my expression. "What is it?" Before I could answer, the door behind us creaked shut. Not slammed. Closed. Deliberately. Mark spun around, hand on his weapon. "Hey!" The handle didn't move when he tried it. Locked. From the outside. The temperature dropped fast. My recorder beeped in protest as the reading plunged. "That's impossible," Sarah whispered. The lights flickered once. Then the radio spoke. Not Eli. Not Jonas. Something imitating them. "You shouldn't have brought the cold with you." My stomach tightened. Mark took a step back. "Who is this?" The voice paused, considering. Then it said my name. Perfectly. I hadn't told anyone I was here. The station groaned, metal contracting as if the building itself were shrinking around us. Frost crept along the walls, blooming outward like living veins. Sarah backed toward me. Her voice came out thin. "We leave. Now." The radio laughed. Not loudly. Just enough to be sure we heard it. Everyone says that. The lights went out. And in the darkness, something began moving. Slowly, between us. Darkness did not arrive all at once. It seeped in layers. First the lights, then the certainty of space, then the sense of where our bodies ended and the room began. Blackridge Station became less of a building and more of a container, holding us still while something inside adjusted to our presence. My recorder was still running. The tiny red light was the only proof that time hadn't stopped. "Don't move," Sarah whispered. Something brushed my leg. Not a hand. Cold air, sliding past like a body that had forgotten its shape. Mark's flashlight snapped on. The beam cut through the dark and landed on the far wall. Nothing there. But the frost had changed. It wasn't random anymore. It curved inward, spiraling, as if drawn toward a center point that didn't exist seconds ago. The radio crackled again. "You feel it now, don't you?" Sarah raised the mic. "Identify yourself." A pause. Then, confusion almost genuine. "We don't remember having a name." The temperature dropped another 5 degrees. That was when I realized the cold wasn't environmental. It was responsive. Case File 01. Blackridge Station, continued. We found Eli in the storage room. Or what was left of him. He was standing upright, frozen in place, eyes open. No frost on his eyelashes. No sign of struggle. His skin looked preserved, almost polished. Like a statue made from a man. Mark stepped forward, then stopped. Eli's mouth moved. Just slightly. "Don't listen to it." Sarah grabbed Mark's arm. "That's not." Eli's jaw cracked wider than it should have. The voice that came out wasn't his anymore. "You brought winter with you." The walls groaned. I looked down. My breath wasn't fogging anymore. I wasn't breathing. I stumbled back, gasping, lungs burning as air rushed in all at once. That was the moment we fled. The door opened without resistance, as if we were being allowed to leave. Outside, the snowstorm had worsened, but our tracks were gone. The van stood untouched, half buried, like it had been there for years instead of minutes. We didn't speak until we were miles away. No one suggested going back. We filed the report as environmentally induced mass hallucination. None of us believed it. The pattern emerges. Blackridge wasn't the first. It was the loudest. As winter deepened, calls came faster. Remote areas. Cold zones. Teams trained for isolation and survival. Gone or worse, returned wrong. I started compiling timelines. Always winter. Always teams. Always silence before the loss. Sarah noticed my notes one night. You think these cases are connected? They're identical, I said. Different locations. Same behavior. Mark leaned against the wall. So what? Ghosts follow seasons now. No, I said. People do. The room fell quiet. I pointed to the files. Every site had a recovery team involved. Search and rescue. Military. Survey crews. Always groups sent to retrieve something or someone from the cold. Sarah's face tightened. You're saying the act of recovery triggers it. I'm saying winter doesn't like giving things back. Case File 02. The frozen barracks. The barracks sat high in the mountains, half swallowed by snowdrifts that looked sculpted rather than fallen. The storm cleared just long enough for us to enter. Inside, heat still worked. Beds were unmade. Lockers open. Coffee mugs half full. Human life paused mid-motion. What happened here? Mark murmured. I didn't answer. I was staring at the ceiling. 5 handprints, pressed deep into frost, as if the men had been lifted upward and held there. Sarah read from an old military report. Her voice shook despite her effort to keep it steady. Training exercise, winter of '94. Unit assigned to retrieve lost recon team. Avalanche suspected. No bodies recovered. She lowered the page. This is the retrieval site. The radio on the desk turned on by itself. Static. Then boots scraping tile. Footsteps in the hall. We all heard them. Mark raised his weapon. Show yourself. The footsteps stopped just outside the doorway. A whisper slid through the crack. We waited. Sarah backed away. For what? The whisper thickened, layered. 5 voices overlapping. For someone to come back for us. The door slammed open. Nothing stood there. But the temperature plummeted. Breath frosting instantly. The beds creaked. Indentations formed. Bodies lying down that we couldn't see. One voice spoke clearly, right beside my ear. You shouldn't promise what winter keeps. The radio burst into screaming. We ran. Paranoia. After the barracks, Mark stopped sleeping. He checked doors 3 times. Avoided mirrors. Flinched at silence. One night, he confronted me. You hear it too, he said. When it's quiet. I didn't deny it. The thing didn't stalk us openly anymore. It learned restraint. Objects shifted slightly. Never enough to prove movement. Voices carried through walls always just beyond understanding. Names whispered in familiar tones. Sarah started receiving calls from unknown numbers. She never answered them. One night, her phone rang anyway. She hadn't touched it. The screen glowed. No signal. She stared at it until it stopped. Then she said, very softly, "It's not following us." Mark frowned. "Then what is it doing?" She met his eyes. "Waiting for us to come back." Case File 03. The village without footprints. The village should not have existed. Maps marked the area as uninhabited. Satellite images showed nothing but snow and trees. Yet there it was. Lights on. Smoke rising. Roads cleared. No people. No tracks. Snow lay untouched between houses, smooth as fabric. Inside one home, food simmered on the stove. Another had a radio playing softly. Different stations in different rooms. All broadcasting voices. Some begged. Some wept. Some laughed. One voice spoke through every speaker at once. "You keep searching." Sarah's hands trembled. "Who are you?" A pause. "What you left behind." I felt a presence at my side. Turned. Saw my own footprints forming beside mine. Step by step. Keeping pace. I didn't scream. I couldn't. Because somewhere deep inside, I knew something worse than fear was happening. Recognition. The truth. We found the archived files buried in a municipal basement, mislabeled and incomplete. A winter recovery team from 42 years ago. Official cause of loss. Avalanche. Unofficial notes told a different story. They discovered a subglacial chamber, unnatural in structure. Too smooth. Too symmetrical. Inside, remains. Not bodies. Impressions. Shapes in ice where people had once been. The team tried to extract something. A core. A presence. They broke it. Winter closed around them. What came back was incomplete. Hungry. It learned through repetition. Through voices. Through teams who came to retrieve what Winter had already claimed. Sarah closed the file slowly. "We're not investigators," she said. "We're invitations." The radio crackled on the desk beside us. A familiar voice spoke. Eli's. "It's colder when you remember." The lights flickered. And outside, snow began to fall again. Heavier than before. As if the season itself had been waiting for us to understand, so it could finish what it started. The storm had cut us off entirely. Roads buried. Radios dead. GPS useless. Nothing existed outside our perimeter except snow, trees, and something older waiting beneath it all. We reached the tunnel, the final site the archives had pointed to. Subterranean. Frost-coated metal doors. The air smelled wrong. Metallic, stale, and alive. Sarah shined her flashlight ahead. The beam sliced through mist that wasn't quite steam. Breath formed inside it, but not ours. "I don't like this," Mark whispered. His voice bounced oddly off walls. "It's listening." "I thought we agreed to see this through," Sarah replied, voice tight. "We have to document it." I stayed close to the wall, recorder in hand. Red light blinking. Each step echoed too long. Each breath too loud. We reached the first chamber. Ice lined the walls like jagged teeth. My eyes adjusted and I saw the shapes. Bodies. No. Silhouettes frozen mid-motion. Men and women. But their faces were blank, features erased. A whisper curled around my ears. "You shouldn't have come." I froze. Mark raised his flashlight, spinning in a slow circle. Shadows danced. But the shadows weren't ours. They moved independently, circling, watching, waiting. Eli's voice called from deeper in the tunnel. "You shouldn't be here." I knew he wasn't speaking. Not really. The sound came from nowhere. The voice wore his accent, his cadence. Perfect imitation. Too perfect. "We warned you." The walls shifted. Not physically, but perceptually. Corridors stretched and compressed. We turned left. It became right. Time did not follow linear rules here. 1 second passed, then 5 minutes. Then we weren't sure if we had paused or moved at all. Sarah screamed. I ran toward her. Mark had stopped, staring at a wall that shouldn't have been there. Frost patterns crawled like veins. One formed into letters. "You can't leave." The temperature plunged rapidly. Breath froze mid-air. My recorder beeped and flickered, then went silent. We split up almost involuntarily. Instinct more than choice. I heard Mark before I saw him. "It's inside me." By the time I reached him, his face had shifted. Not human. Not Eli. Not anyone. Features elongated slightly, skin slick and pale. His eyes, ours, reflected the cold as if it were liquid. I stumbled back. "Mark." He turned, voice layered. Multiple tones at once. Screams and whispers bleeding together. "You shouldn't have remembered." Sarah's scream echoed down another corridor. I ran. The thing was everywhere. It could imitate, anticipate our anticipation. Footsteps echoed behind me, then ahead. I saw my reflection in ice. Smiling, wrong. "You can't leave," it whispered, my own voice this time. Doors appeared where there were none. corridors twisted like ice had memory. Every surface reflected our fear back at us. I found Sarah, or someone who looked like her, kneeling, shaking, whispering numbers into a dead radio. "Don't," I began. Her head snapped up. Not her face. Too sharp, too hollow. Eyes darker than shadows. "It's warmer here," the voice hissed. Not her. Not mine. All voices layered at once. I tried to pull her, but she screamed. Not at me. At something inside the walls. Something unseen. The ice cracked. Shards fell like rain. Snow filled the chamber faster than possible. Eli appeared, or what the thing had made him into. I recognized the uniform, the face, the tilt of the head. But his mouth moved too slow, too wide. He spoke in a chorus of past teams lost to winter. "We only wanted warmth. You brought it with you." The walls began moving, slowly closing in. Not physically, spatially. Perception fractured. Mark ran past me, but I didn't recognize him. I screamed. Not a human scream. Something else answered from within me, from outside me, from the tunnel itself. "You remember," it said. "You remember the ones you left behind." The temperature hit 0. My vision clouded. My heart raced. The floor felt liquid, then solid, then non-existent. I tripped. Landed on ice that wasn't ice. Felt a hand on my shoulder. My own hand. Another's. The voices overlapped, laughing, screaming, begging. And then Sarah, or what I thought was Sarah, stood over me, calm, smiling. "Welcome back," she said. Not her. Not me. Not anyone. I realized the truth. It didn't care about us individually. It cared about repetition, imitation, memory. It fed on those who remembered winter. And we were remembering every detail, every fear, every loss. I ran again. The corridors looped endlessly. The ceiling descended. The lights flickered. Frost veins formed faces. Faces of all the teams, frozen in time, screaming silently. Mark's scream echoed. I didn't stop. At the final chamber, I saw the core, a pulsating frozen heart. Not human. Not fully organic. Not fully ice. It remembered everything, and it learned from every step we took. I approached. The red recording light blinked. "You can leave," it whispered. I realized it wasn't lying, but leaving required giving something back. Something no one could spare. I screamed into the cold. Into myself. Into it. And the world contracted. Time shattered. Snow poured. Voices layered. Footsteps multiplied. And then silence. I was outside. The tunnel was gone. The storm cleared. Rescue teams found the van abandoned. Tracks leading nowhere. Snow untouched. Sarah, Mark, Eli gone. Only I remained. And somewhere in the snow, I heard the faintest whisper. Next winter. The storm had passed. Not a breath of wind. Not a whisper of movement in the trees. Snow lay untouched, white and perfect, as if it had erased everything that had happened. I was alone. I walked back to the van. Frost glazed the windshield like a thin layer of glass. Inside, my notebook lay open, pages frozen stiff, ink smeared into illegibility. The recorder was in my pocket. Red lights still blinking, though the audio had long since stopped. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that presses in on your chest and makes your heartbeat sound like a warning siren. I tried to speak aloud. Words faltered in my throat. My own voice sounded strange, alien, like it wasn't quite mine. I drove back down the narrow, snowed-in road, each mile stretching into hours. The world beyond the trees looked ordinary. Signs of life returned. Smoke curled from chimneys. Dogs barked in the distance. People moved inside houses, unaware of what winter had consumed just miles away. I called in the report. The authorities listened patiently. Their voices clipped, procedural. I left out details. Certain things could never be explained. Certain things were better left in the snow. But the cold followed me. Not in temperature. In thought. in memory, in reflection, in the quiet moments when night falls and the world seems still. I can feel it brushing against my chest, threading through my spine, tugging at the corners of my mind. I began to notice small things at home. My own footsteps didn't sound right. Sometimes I would see shadows that moved against the direction of the light. My reflection in the mirror sometimes lingered too long. Sometimes it smiled before I did. Sarah's name haunted me. Mark's, Eli's, names that I could barely remember, names that were already being folded into the snow. I started recording again, compulsively, every sound, every creak, every whisper. Some nights the audio played back voices I didn't recognize. Pleading, screaming, laughing, sometimes fragments of my own voice, saying things I never said. One evening, the phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again. And again. Finally, I picked up. Silence. Then breathing. Close, deliberate, cold. A pause. Then a whisper. My own voice. Winter remembers. The line went dead. I could no longer tell if the sound had come from the phone or from the room itself. The frost began appearing in unusual places. Windows inside the walls, curling into delicate, perfect veins. Footprints. My footprints. And alongside them, one extra set. Following, always following. I tried to leave the town. Tried to escape. Each winter it finds me. Not all at once. Not visibly. But in small ways. The cold that bites deeper than the weather. The silence that waits for me in empty rooms. The sense that someone or something is moving just beyond the edge of vision. Sometimes I wake to find the van still parked in my driveway, buried in snow, though it has not snowed in days. Sometimes I hear the sound of knocking, 3 slow taps against a wall where nothing could stand. I have started avoiding mirrors. I do not answer unknown calls. I do not speak the names of those lost. And yet, every year when the temperature drops, I feel it brushing at the edges of my memory, gathering what it can. I can feel winter learning again. Watching. Waiting. The last team. The last records. The last people. I know now that it is inevitable. Winter does not forgive curiosity. It does not let mistakes go unpunished. It does not forget. I remain because it allows me. Fragile, terrified, and endlessly aware. The world outside seems normal, ordinary, warm, full of life. I know it is only temporary. And somewhere in the distance, across miles of snow and ice, I hear it whispering again. Next winter. I turn the heat higher. Wrap myself in blankets. Try to convince myself that I am safe. But the shadows that do not belong move across the walls. The voices I do not recognize echo faintly in my ears. Winter is patient. Winter is inevitable. And I will never be alone again.